I'm obsessed with both miniature food and keyboards. So then I got to thinking, okay, why don't I combine the two and make a miniature food keyboard? And then it got even more specific and I asked myself, what if a keyboard was made out of sushi? That's the video. Hope you enjoy. So my idea is we make a keyboard and the case looks like wood and all the little keycaps are sushi. I know you're probably thinking, Madison, how are we going to accomplish this? Well, let me show you the process of the sushi keyboard. Okay, step one, main pieces. We have keycaps and a keyboard case. We need to find a base model to add onto for keycaps and the keyboard case. We need to find bases for 1U or 1 unit size keycaps and bases for non-1U size keycaps. So things like caps, function, alt, control, shift, tab, and spacebar. Then for each of those, we're going to have to make an open top base and a full rice base. The open top is for sushi rolls, and then the full rice base is for any type of sushi that has a topping. So like the one that's rice and then has just shrimp on top. We're gonna need those for both multiple U keycaps and 1U keycaps. Then each of those is gonna need either a filling or a topping added to it, which we will also make. And you'll notice all of these are connected to digitally sculpting. That's how we're gonna be making all of this. Then we're gonna take our digitally sculpted pieces, export them as STLs, lay them out in a slicer, add supports, slice that shit, 3D print it with resin, and then prepare to mold. Madison, that doesn't seem like a finished product. You'd be right, it's double-sided. The next process is cleaning and curing. We're gonna print a molding enclosure. We need an enclosure to pour the silicone into, otherwise it would literally just go everywhere. Mold with silicone. This is silicone. Then we're gonna demold and test them. Then we're gonna cast with resin, but we're not just gonna do it like dump, done. No. We're mixing custom colors for each filling. If it's salmon, it needs to be salmon colored. If it's rice, it needs to be white. And then we're gonna paint in each of those fillings. After we do that, we resin pour. Then we're gonna demold the keycaps, add any painted details, and then seal. And that's it. I found on Thingiverse's 60% keyboard case and I dragged that bitch into Blender, and then Blender, when I tried to flip the normals so it wouldn't look like this, crashed. And then it crashed again. And then it crashed a third time. And then eventually I got Blender to work by not making it process 8 bajillion mathematical sequences at once. Then I went into sculpting mode and I started learning how to sculpt in Blender because I've never actually done this before, even though I've said I wanted to learn Blender for like 7 years. And we gave this keyboard a wood texture. Snatched. What? And then I 3D printed it and cured it. And then I went to Amazon, I bought a $15 keyboard, destroyed it by ripping the PCB board out of it, and then found out that I had in fact not printed something that was the same size as my PCB board. But I'm impatient, so I was like, I could just sand it down to make the board fit in it. Long story short, this was not a good solution, but at this point, I've spent so long on this project that I just simply could not fathom reprinting this. And I know what you may be thinking, Madison, this is the first step. What do you mean you spent so long? It's been like 8 months, okay? Not of constant work, but like, you'll find out. Spoiler alert, you'll find out. Do you guys like the haircut I gave myself? I feel like I'm a fucking horse. Okay, now pretend all of that never happened because I ended up reprinting the keyboard case in a 60% size because that keyboard case fucking sucked. It sucked! And then instead of adding the texture physically into it, I painted it on because I ended up not really loving the look of it 3D printed. That was a fucking lie. That was a lie. I just lied to you. I just didn't want to have to reprint it with resin. But I still think the painted version looks really good, so like, I decided to do a little research on the most cultured place of all, Pinterest. And then because I loved Thingiverse, I went onto Thingiverse and I downloaded some keycap STLs that were in the profiles I wanted for these sushi keycaps. I took the base keycap I needed, which was the 1 unit one because that's the most plentiful one on a keyboard, and I turned it into a rice base. Rice base. What the fuck? That fucking broke my computer? Girl, if I do this, it breaks the fucking recording. What the hell? So that I can add on things to it, like an avocado, or an egg, or some salmon, or some fish eggs. Now, the first ones I spent hours on, and I don't like how they look. Like, I'm fully... The one that I do like how it looks is the egg one, and it's just because it's very clearly like the eggs. I was going for hyper-realistic textures, but I don't know how to use Blender well enough, I think, to execute on what I wanted to do. It doesn't look right. I just think I'm gonna restart with the sushi part, which is... Anyways, let's watch someone crash out in HD. So then I also covered every other unit size of keycap with rice. But then I made the critical error of going to the internet and asking for people's opinions. And guess what you all said? It looks like turds. It looks like maggots. It looks like fucking dog shit. It really got to me, and I redid it. Here's a really good question for you at home. if you take something and then you add something onto it, does the size of it A, get bigger, B, get smaller, or C, stay the same? The answer is A, and I'm a dumb fuck. Hi guys, I have what some might call horrible news. So in the process of making these, I forgot about something called clearance. So my options are either reprint everything I've printed or sand things so they have a bevel. And here's why I think I'm gonna do that. And naturally, I made this mistake and didn't realize the error until after I had already printed, cleaned, cured, sanded, and was ready to mold the original batch of keycaps. But because of my mistake, so at this point, I went back into Blender, I took my keycaps, and I took the original STLs before I added anything to them, and I overlapped them on top of each other. I figured out how to select just the stem of the keycaps, and then invert that selection so that only the body of the keycaps were selected. I was able to scale the keycaps to the proper size and compare them to the keycaps I had laid under them. Eventually, I got through the process of making all these keycaps, and I went, something was just off, and I realized none of them were actually round, and I didn't want to make a round keycap because I was aware there would be certain limitations with that, such as it not fitting over the actual switch, but I decided I had to do it to overcome my fear of failure, and you know what? Took 6 times, and this much garbage, but I did it. And I do really like these. I had to completely redesign the molding system to make them, but when that worked out, eventually, you know, now in the future, I know how to do it. So I'm just prepping myself for success for the next keyboard I make. The first step is printing the enclosures that we're gonna mold these bitches in, because you can't, I don't have to explain this to you. You're not, okay, whatever. I'm not explaining this. I'm not explaining it. Like, I'm realizing that I'm explaining shit that is just so self-explanatory, but also I'm like, ugh. So every one of these mold enclosures has 2 parts, and then you snap them together, and then there's a base piece that you can put your keycap on, and then insert that into the thing that you just snapped together. And then there's a second part, which is the stem mold part of it, which you make a mold of, and then the mold is the inverse of the stem, so that when you make a cast of it, the cast is the inverse of an inverse, making it the correct format. And now that we printed the mold enclosures, we can actually make the molds. And let me tell you something about mold making. It's not easy, because you want every detail to be captured from the original piece that you're molding, what a lot of people do, using a pressure pot. And what a pressure pot does is it takes all the air that's trapped in your silicone and is preventing your mold from being perfect, and it compresses it down. This silicone is so viscous, you can see when it was compressing the air in the pressure chamber, it sucked silicone under the keycap and left these weird gaps here. Like, that should be pretty flat. You can also kind of see that there's this little ridge of silicone under these pieces. Now that's completely filled. So I think that if I put these back into the pressure chamber, they're going to mold successfully because the silicone won't be able to go under them. Look at that. It worked! Wow! Here's me pulling out all the non-1 U size keycaps. Okay, now we're moving on to the 1 unit size keycaps, because that's the more interesting process. I ended up mixing and testing out a few different colors with the UV resin for these keycaps, and then once I got the colors to a place I liked them, I used really, really thin layers and built them up and cured in between every layer. And once I had the color part of it, I cast the white rice part with just normal resin, because curing something like that in tiny layers with UV resin would have taken actually forever, and I'm just not down for that. When I do eventually sell these designs of keycaps, by the way, link down below for that, I will be using 2-part mixing resin instead of UV resin. I just feel it's more durable in the long run and yellows less. And then once the 1 U size keycaps were done, I pulled them out and I decided that some of them didn't have enough dimension in them because they were just cast using one flat color. So I ended up doing a little bit of an acrylic paint wash, if you will. I thinned out some acrylic paint and painted it into the crevices of the keycaps so that you could see a little bit more of the depth in them. And then I sealed them. I spent hours researching different finishing techniques for keycaps and what would be like the most durable top coat, and I ended up going with this Liquitex. I think outside of this video, I'm gonna test quite a few different coats on keycaps and see if I can do some sort of scientific method to that research so I can actually come to a founded conclusion on what is the best sealant for keycaps, especially when you are doing resin and acrylic paint together. Guys, we have all the pieces. You would never guess it, but I'm holding the finished keyboard right here. I didn't paint the back of it. That's right, guys. I finished the keyboard. The space bar is broken, so I have to glue it on here. But like, I will say, I really love this keyboard. I think it turned out really good. I just think that it shouldn't have taken me as long as it did to do it. I like how it looks. If you like any of these keycaps, they will eventually be up on my Etsy. Some of them already are, but some of them I want to tweak the colors a little bit more and like make color recipes for them so that every keycap is the same and people don't get wildly different colorings. There are quite a few things I learned in this, but overall, I think this keyboard turned out really well. I'm proud of it. Even though it took me a year, I still like it. So I guess I will see you in the next video that doesn't take a year to release.